We've been lucky enough to travel to some of the top college baseball programs in the country, and here are our top 5 lessons we've learned on the hitting development side. Number one is challenging environments are a staple of everyone's development. Everywhere we've been, machines, velocity, spin, making things difficult on hitters because hitting in game is extremely hard is very important to everybody's development. The article that came out from Kyle Schwarber about the developmental strides he's made, it's been the same thing of I'm going to hit spin. I'm going to hit velocity each and every day because when I step on the field, hitting is hard. And every program across the country, there's not a single one that says, yeah, we make our guys feel good before they go into the game, except pregame BP typically. But in their developmental windows, they are always challenging their guys and ensuring that they're getting better throughout the week so that come Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it makes it seem a lot easier to be done.
Yeah, it's such a simple and logical thought process in my mind, because obviously you want to train at the speed you want to, but for a long time, that necessarily wasn't always the case in baseball, especially on the offensive side of things. I think that if you want to be able to hit a 90 plus mile an hour fastball, you better be training to hit a 90 plus mile an hour fastball. And if you can make your batting practice or your practice settings harder than the game, then it's going to be that much easier when you step on the field to actually have to face an arm that is live. And I know that sometimes people don't always agree with it. And sure, there are times where you need to feel good or you need to break down the swing, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But, in baseball, you're a really good hitter if you succeed. It's a saying forever 3 out of 10 times, 4 out of 10 times at the college level, whatever it may be. So in practice, why are we practicing to succeed 9 out of 10 times by having easy PP? We shouldn't. We should be in a challenging environment because not only is it going to train you athletically, I think, from a standpoint of, like I said, being able to hit a 90 plus mile an hour fastball, but mentally it's going to train you to understand what success for you in the batter's box actually looks like. And it's not, sunshine and rainbows every time you step up to the plate. That's not possible unless you're playing a video game.
Yeah, there is a psychological side to hitting, and I think all the top hitting coaches understand that element as well. Is that our guys have to be confident, but they also have to be prepared. And challenging environments are the only way to prepare said player for the game.
And I think you just need to build up the scar tissue, right? Like you have to build up that scar tissue. So, for the people who want to argue that, well, then I'm just beating my players down in practice and they're losing confidence in the game. And it's like, well, then you're not going about it the right way, because if you do it properly and if you do it with the correct understanding and the correct coaching points before we actually start the practice or the drill setting, then you're allowing your guys to build scar tissue so that they become tougher, which will then allow them to succeed when it gets toughest.
100%. 100%. Second point that has stood out at a lot of the programs we've been to is there is a time to compete and there is a time to develop. And I like that a lot of programs, specifically Dallas Baptist, they have 3 setups during practice where one is under the stands, and that's their challenging environment where their guys go to fail. They have a developmental where they target movement patterns, med ball work, water bag work down the left field line.
Left field.
And then on field, they kind of translate it all together and put it into situational hitting, run scoring, and things like that. The things that the top programs do the best is they understand the balance, whether it's time of year on the calendar, the difference between September and May, whether it's time in the developmental window of being able to attack it in a setting that is, hey, this is your movement prep. This is where you're challenging your moves in terms of, do you want to try to move your hands? Do you want to try to do something differently with your swing? And then there's a time to compete, right? And ultimately building that out so that guys can turn the compete side of their brain on when they step in the batter's box and not be thinking about any of their movement patterns and how their hips are working and how they're hinging and all of those things that can come up when you're in a developmental window, and how to go out there and just attack what your approach is and execute it on it in game.
Yeah, I think if you can have the 3 different environments, literally changing the environment for your players, it's a lot easier to understand, hey, when we're in this cage, we're working on this. When we're, down the left field line, like you're talking about at Dallas Baptist, obviously not everyone has that, but I think kind of that mindset. And obviously, not to sound like a broken record, but hitting is extremely hard. Right. And the swing can be a complex movement, especially because everybody's body is different, moves differently. That's something that obviously Maryland really focus on, is the individual movement patterns of each and every human being there is, from, things as simple as walking to writing to how you pick stuff up off the ground. And so, everyone needs to be able to understand how they move and work on those movement things. And it is, imperative. And you have to build an efficient swing, especially if you're going to try and hit high level pitching with how good stuff is nowadays. But you can't be thinking about any of those things when you're trying to compete. When it's time to get in the box and actually face, whether it's, the competitive environments we talked about earlier off a hack attack, or if it's facing an arm in the game, you can't be thinking about your setup, your first move, your swing, anything like that. You just have to, the old saying of see ball, hit ball. So being able to break those developmental times down and have a clear understanding for your players of when you need to be focused on what, can relieve the stress and can, of the competitive side of things, and can help them understand what is important that day. And if you're going to truly get better and develop players 1% every day, is a saying a lot of these programs throw out there, they have to understand what is important that day in that practice session with the amount of time they have allotted.
You'll hear a lot of coaches say win, right? What's important now. And I think it starts with the coach, right? I think baseball players, specifically hitters, are always trying to tinker with their swings, and even in competitive settings. And it really starts from the top. If a coach, I mean, we've all had those coaches that want to cue you from the dugout or from the first base coach's box and tell you to move your hands, or you need to use your legs more, or whatever those coaching points are. If that's the mindset that the coach is bringing to competitive windows, the player's going to feel that, and they're going to make mechanical internal cue adjustments while they're trying to compete and face high level pitching. And you've made the point multiple times, hitting's really hard. Success in hitting is really hard. And if we're thinking about where our hands are, how our shoulders are, is our posture good, all of these things without an external cue, we're going to be domed up and we're not going to be in a position mentally to hit. So it starts with the coach of being able to make sure the right mindset is set. And that's why I really like the Dallas Baptist example of where you are determines what you're doing, right? In this setting, you're going to fail, and you have to be okay failing. And it is okay, because when we get out on the field, you're going to see yourself spray the backside gap with some juice, right? You're going to see the ball fly over the fence. You're going to see these things, and you're going to get that confidence back. And then down the left field line, you're going to work on this. Hey, this is how we utilize the ground a little bit better. This is how we make sure we maintain our posture through the baseball. All of those different pieces of the puzzle come in a different setting. And not everybody has the luxury of having different settings for each of those, but I think it's very important to identify that the mindset that you set as the coach, every player is going to take that into their drill work. And if you communicate that this is a place where it's okay to fail, don't worry if you make 0 barrels out of 10 swings, if you make 3 barrels out of 10 swings, or if you go 10 for 10, right? The success in here doesn't always, translate into each and every round. But when we go out on the field, you're going to see the results. And then when we go into the left field, you're going to be able to see the results there. And that brings us to point number 3, where it's individualized development. All of the top programs in the country individualize their development. And you might think, of course they do. No, it's about maximizing what guys specifically do well and being able to put them in a position to be successful. So many times in the private sector or for younger baseball coaches, we look at a swing and we want to change. The infamous tweet from years back where an account posted a video of Mike Trout hitting when he was in his prime and said, "This is my friend's son. He's looking for advice." And every hitting coach in the comments was offering advice to Mike Trout, MVP winner. So many coaches want to change. We all want to change. But the best do in the world is take what that person does well, maximize their strengths. And if that fails, then they go to the drawing board and make adjustments. They don't make adjustments and then see if it works. They make adjustments after seeing if they can maximize what said player already does well.
Yeah, and I think it's also understanding how you can develop your guys best, what your strengths are as a coaching staff, right? I think that ties into it as well. What you do best, and some places we've been to, they put guys in buckets based on certain things. Some guys, some places and some staffs have the resources to be able to truly individualize it. And I think one of the biggest things that most of these programs do is they are able to, and a lot of them have talked about, is making guys better at what they already do best and, amplifying their strengths instead of constantly focusing on the weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think being able to do that puts guys in a position to succeed in game. And that even comes down to the best of the best programs. They take guys and they're able to understand, hey, this guy hits a high ride fastball really well. Okay, well, this team's bringing in a high ride fastball guy, so let's pinch hit him for the guy that may struggle with a high ride fastball. This guy hits spin really well, so we're going to start him against a guy that's 60% spin as a starting pitcher. All of these different scenarios, they're then putting guys in a position to be successful in game as well, based on those individual movements or individual successes, or whatever they see. And then it even comes down to like not being able to chase something that those hitters aren't. If we have a undersized left-handed hitter who does a really good job of hitting ground balls through the 5-6 hole, well, it doesn't matter that Dallas Baptist wants to lead the nation in doubles and hit a ton of home runs, and it's a favorable park. When that guy goes into game, Coach Hefner and staff aren't going to expect that guy to be poolside Jimmy Jack, right? They're going to expect that guy to do exactly what he does well and tie his success and what they expect from him into that right there. And I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle as well, is once we get into game, then being able to put those guys in a position to succeed, right? If we know this is a certain pitch shape that they struggle with, don't pinch hit that guy. Or if we even, to a point, Coach Bakich made this point, if we don't think they're mentally ready to succeed, don't expose them to something just because their swing fits a certain profile, just because they should be able to have success. If they're not mentally ready for that, you might do more damage than help by putting them in a harmful situation where they don't end up having the success that you anticipate, and then they end up being put back in terms of mentally struggling and things like that. Point number 4, and I think this is a really more elaborate one, it kind of ties into challenging environments, but utilizing different bats in different shapes to test movement patterns. So many times we want to take a video of a hitter and say, hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to do that. What the schools like Charlotte, Coach Seb Uhar, who's now a upper minor leagues hitting coordinator with the Washington Nationals, what Coach Hefner do really well is they say, instead of trying to fix this mechanically with an internal cue that we've already mentioned, okay, you have a hard time getting on plane with a good fastball. Well, we're going to take a hack attack, take the legs off, and we're going to shoot fastballs at the top of the zone, and we're going to make you adjust, right? Force the environment of the drill work to challenge the hitter to do what you're trying to make them do, right? He said, feed the issue. We had a social media clip that went out that did really well that Coach Hefner was talking about. If we have a guy that's struggling with something, we're going to feed the issue and have them learn how to adjust rather than coaching them through said adjustment.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger things too that goes under this umbrella and works with this is like being open-minded, and everyone's path to success looks completely different. And that not only is that obviously like your journey off the field, but your how you prepare, how you practice, what types of tools work for you, and just be open-minded to everything. Try something. And that was one of the biggest things for me that Coach Hefner was really harped on, is like they had in their developmental cage where they're working on their movement patterns and they're working on the swings, and that's their time to focus on it. They had everything you could possibly think of in that place. It was like a almost like a toy store for hitting coaches and hitters. And the amount of guys that use one or two things or use a handful of things, it was different for every single player. And so I think, being able to put different implements in your hand, being able to be open-minded to different things that may not just be putting a bat in your hand and seeing a pitch come from 60 feet, 6 inches, can be huge for some guys, and it can help and kind of shorten their development window, because different things work for different people, right? And it's the reason why people argue all the time on social media in the hitting world, because one person posts a clip of someone doing one certain drill and half the people think it's the stupidest thing, half the people think it's the dumbest thing. Well, for that hitter it might be perfect, for another hitter it might be the worst thing you could possibly do for them. So being open-minded to it, having a bunch of different implements for guys to use, for guys to try to kind of clean up the swing and get them feeling most comfortable and confident, is all that matters at the end of the day. And you can't do that by just putting a bat in everyone's hand, going 60 feet, 6 inches, and throwing baseballs at them. Some guys, want to start feeling good by hitting plyos. They want to hit tennis balls. They want to use a wiffle ball bat. They want to use a stick. It doesn't matter. But if it works for them, it works for them. And at some point, you kind of just have to be hands off and say, I don't really understand. I've never seen anyone do this, but if it works for you, it works for us.
100%. So many in the hitting community want to poo-poo any drill work, implements, ways to train, and the reality is all of it works if it works for that individual, right? And being able to the best hitting coaches can take every movement in the book, every drill in the book, every implement in the book, and be able to implement it into their individualized training for said athlete. And whether that's Coach Sebihar talked about it in the Dominican Republic, you'll see them hitting bottle caps with sticks or skinny bats and things like that. It's like we can learn a lot from that, right? The drills that you'll see Juan Soto do. Does that mean everybody should do what Juan Soto does in terms of the knob to the ball drill? No, but do we have to sit there and on social media and criticize what Juan Soto does? No, because if you developed him, you could hit upside down. You could stand on your head and try to hit. You could do handstands, backflips while swinging a bat. It doesn't matter because if the result is what Juan Soto or Aaron Judge is doing on the field in Major League Baseball, it works for them. And I think the best hitting coaches in the world can take whatever that individual needs. And every time a new hitter steps into the cage, they're putting a different implement, they're putting a different drill set, they're putting a different cue, approach in that hitter's hands and in their mind to be able to execute on, because they're chameleons, they're adaptable, they're able to take what that hitter does well, maximize it, and put said hitter in a position to develop, succeed, and then that directly translates to in-game success, which is the ultimate goal. And lastly, number 5, the swing doesn't matter, right? And I think the best in the world that develop hitters at the best rate, the swing doesn't matter. And what do we mean that the swing doesn't matter? Does that mean we don't spend any time on the swing in a developmental lens? Does that mean we don't spend any time on movement? No. But when it takes time to be in that batter's box, in that chalk rectangle, it's time to compete. We need to turn off that side of our brain that's thinking about any internal or mechanical cues that we could have. And it's time to focus on what that guy's doing 60 feet, 6 inches away, what he's throwing, how we execute on our approach, and how we succeed in game. The ability to turn off what our swing is and get in that chalk rectangle and compete is the most important thing a hitter can do when the lights come on.
Yeah, there's no perfect swing. There's no such thing as the perfect swing, and I think if you pull together everything we've learned from a lot of the places we've been this year, if you talk to Maryland, they will tell you that in the sense that everybody moves differently. That's them saying there is no one perfect swing. Everyone's going to have a different swing because their body's going to move differently. You go down to Arkansas and you talk to Nate Thompson, and they're certainly developing swings, but he's going to tell you that at the end of the day, what matters most is scoring the most runs and winning. And then you go to Penn State and you talk to their hitting conglomerate, and they're going to tell you how they can do it best based on the types of guys they can do it. And all of that, pulled together, even though a lot of this is player development conversation that we have that sometimes does focus around building swings and mechanics and the way to kind of teach hitters, is that, look, we have to be competitive. We have to be competitive, and we have to take the group of guys we have, and the object of the game is to score runs. And in the beauty of baseball is that you can have 9 guys in your lineup that look completely different and all have different strengths and different weaknesses. And as long as we understand what we do best and how we do it, and we can build a bunch of guys who are tough, who are competitive, and understand kind of the common philosophy and goal of our team, we can score runs and we can win a lot of games. And, I think that's one of the fun things is you can get really in the weeds like we do with these coaches. But at the end of the day, if you kind of look at it from a 10,000 foot view, that's all everyone's trying to do is build a bunch of guys who are competitive, go about it the right way, work hard, and kind of believe in whatever system fits the roster that has been put together by the coaching staff.
That is the biggest disconnect between the hitting guru community and the coaching community. Like the real tried and true coaching community is that the ultimate goal is to score runs, win baseball games and score runs. And however you do that, it doesn't matter what the swing looks like. So many in the private sector, in the hitting guru community, want to build the best swing, the picturesque swing, the one that looks perfect on social media, but it can lack things that don't translate into game because maybe it's not what the individual needs to succeed when a guy's slinging 95 with a banger slider, commanding it to both sides of the plate, right? So those are the biggest disconnects. This is the biggest takeaway I've taken from these coaches. Every single one of the top coaches in college baseball could be hitting gurus if they wanted to. They understand the swing, they understand movement patterns, they understand individualized development, all of those things. If anything, I would argue they would be the best hitting gurus because they would be able to take every individual, and their experiences in the college game with team settings has allowed them to learn a little bit of everything and a lot of bit of everything, let's call it what it is, because they're really good at teaching every part of the developmental track and being able to maximize what each hitter does. But they know how to tie that into scoring runs, right? Which at the end of the day is a simplified nature of all these things we do in the private sector, in the cage, and all of those developmental things that we see on social media and things like that. If it doesn't translate to scoring runs, these guys lose jobs. These guys have to uproot their family and move. So at the end of the day, they're able to translate that message that, hey, this is our competitive window and this is our developmental window. And when you get into the competitive window, when it's a 1v1 matchup with you against the pitcher, it doesn't matter if you have a picturesque swing if you can't put barrel to baseball, which at the end of the day, if we do that more times than not, we're going to score a lot of runs. We're going to win a lot of baseball games. We're going to play baseball for a really long time. And that's going to be the developmental tracks that these hitters need. So those are our 5 takeaways from traveling to the top college baseball programs in the country and being able to discuss hitting with some of the best hitting coaches in the country. Make sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content from the Unofficial Visit.